I'm not trying to honor you. I'm trying to get you to run my kingdom while I eat, drink, and haul my way to an early grave.
Everybody knows the joke. Robert Baratheon, the fat, drunk king who ate himself to death, hoarded the crown into debt, and let the Lannisters run his kingdom while he slept off the wine. That's the man the internet remembers. The punchline, the warning label on a wine bottle, the character you're supposed to laugh at for a season and then forget. But if you start to look closer, that image falls apart fast. Because the man everyone laughs at spent 15 years grieving a woman he thought was stolen from him, and the story quietly tells us she was never stolen at all. The oaf who supposedly understood nothing predicts in a single scene exactly how the kingdom will tear itself apart the moment he's gone. And the fool who drank himself into a boar was actually murdered, killed with his own weaknesses by someone who knew the whole realm would blame the victim. This is the story of a king everyone agreed to write off. Not the villain, I want to be careful there, just the obstacle. The character the show teaches you to dismiss so you can get on with the people you're told are interesting. And the more you actually watch him, not the meme of Robert, the man on screen, the more you realise we had him backwards the entire time. His story unfolds in 3 revelations that quietly demolish everything you think you know about him. Beginning right here. The Robert. Everyone thinks they know. Let's be fair to the joke first, because it isn't made of nothing. Think back to the very first time we meet him on the show. The king arrives at Winterfell, climbs down from his horse, and the first real beat we get is Ned barely recognising his old friend. This towering warrior who won a war is now a heavy, red-faced man who wants a drink and a whore before he's even through the gate. By the time of the series, Robert has gained 8 stone to spur, or quite over £100 since he and Ned last stood together 9 years earlier.
You got fat.
And then the money. Once Ned takes over his hand, he opens the books and finds the crown drowning. So the surface case writes itself, and the show hands it to you in the first couple of episodes. A man who let the treasury rot, let his body rot, and let other people run his kingdom, while he chased boars and barmaids. Understood Robert is a cautionary tale, a warrior who got soft on a throne he couldn't be bothered to sit. Now, quick note for the show-only watchers, because it matters for everything that follows. A lot of who Robert is happened before the cameras ever roll. This part is backstory. The books and the histories fill it in, but the show never dramatises it on screen. Years before the series, Robert led a rebellion that toppled 300 years of Targaryen rule, personally killing the Crown Prince Rhaegar at the Trident with his warhammer. 6 years into his reign, he crushed the Greyjoy Rebellion alongside Ned and Tywin. That's the man underneath the fat king we're introduced to, and the show trusts you to feel that weight without ever showing it. Hold on to that, because it's the whole tension. The show introduces us to the ruin and asks us to laugh. It never shows us the warrior. It just leaves him buried inside the man on the couch. That's the trap. Because the show keeps handing Robert scenes that quietly contradict the joke. Right there on screen, in dialogue you already watched and probably shrugged past. You just have to be paying attention. There are 3 of them. Revelation 1. The story he fought for was built on a lie. Everything Robert became starts with one story. Rhaegar Targaryen stole his betrothed, Lyanna Stark, and the whole realm burned to get her back. That's the grief he's still drinking at when we meet him. 15 years later, laying a feather in the hand of her statue in the Winterfell crypt. In that crypt scene, Robert tells Ned he kills Rhaegar every night in his dreams.
In my dreams, I kill him every night.
The rebellion had other causes, and the show is clear about them. The Mad King burned Lyanna's father alive and strangled her brother, then demanded Robert's own head. But the personal wound, the thing Robert carried into every battle and every cup after, was Lyanna. Taken. Except here's the part the show saves for its very last seasons. She was never taken. The show's own reveal, through Bran's visions and the annulment record, Sam finds, is that Lyanna went with Rhaegar willingly. The two were secretly married.
Maynard says here that he issued an annulment for Prince Rhaegar and remarried him to someone else at the same time in a secret ceremony in Dawn.
She died giving birth to his son, the boy Ned raised as Jon Snow. Sit with that. The defining wound of Robert's entire life, the grief that hollowed him out, the reason he drank, the reason he let the throne rot, was a version of events that was never true. There was no abduction. There was a woman who chose someone else. And this is what reframes the man completely. Robert dies in the very first season. The truth doesn't surface until the very last, which means, as far as the story ever tells us, Robert died still believing the lie, still hating Rhaegar for a crime that was never a crime.
Whore is pregnant.
You're speaking of murdering a child.
I warned you this would happen back in the north. I warned you, but you didn't care to hear well.
So every time he snarls the Dragonspawn's name, every time he wants a girl across the sea dead, he's swinging at a ghost that was never guilty of the thing he's punishing. That's not villainy. That's a man weaponized by his own grief and aimed for the rest of his life at the wrong target. And he never once gets to find out. Now hold that image. A man hollowed out over something that never happened, because the show's about to reveal how sharp that broken man actually was. Revelation 2. The mind everyone underestimated. If you only remember Robert as noise, the belching, the wenching, the war stories, the show quietly buried two scenes that say the opposite. Watch them back to back. First, a small one that's easy to miss. Season 1, Episode 3. Robert, Jaime, and Barristan trade stories about the first man they ever killed. Robert describes cutting down a boy at Summerhall with his hammer, and then says the part the songs leave out.
They never tell you how they all shit themselves. They don't put that part in the songs.
Read who's saying it. The man everyone files under war nostalgic drunk is the one person in the room telling you the glory is a lie. That the songs are propaganda over boys dying in their own filth. He's not living in the fantasy. He's the only one who sees through it. But the scene that should end the joke forever is 2 episodes later. Season 1, Episode 5. The Wolf and the Lion. The Small Council. Cersei scoffs that the Dothraki are no threat. They can't even sail. And Robert, the man she spent years talking down to, takes her apart.
Dothraki don't sail. Every child knows that. They don't have discipline. They don't have armor. They don't have siege weapons.
It's a neat little trick you do. You move your lips and your father's voice comes out.
Then he lays out the fingers and fist metaphor. And this is the whole argument for the man's mind.
Which is the bigger number, 5 or 1?
5.
5. 1. One army, a real army, united behind one leader with one purpose. Our purpose died with the Mad King.
Now we've got as many armies as there are men with gold in their purse, and everybody wants something different. Stop and appreciate what just happened. The fat drunk just predicted the War of the 5 Kings. By mechanism, not by luck. A realm with no shared purpose, splintering into private armies. That is exactly how Westeros tears itself apart the moment he's gone. He's wrong about the immediate threat. Daenerys isn't the danger, but dead right about the systemic one that actually destroys everything. And he indicts himself in the same breath.
We haven't had a real fight in 9 years. Backstabbing doesn't prepare you for a fight.
He's not blind to the rot. He's naming it out loud, at the table, to the very people causing it. Now, Steelman time, because I refuse to sell you a clean hero. The Stain. Because this isn't a redemption video. Here's the part the misunderstood crowd loves to skip, and I won't.
She dies.
I will have no part in it.
You're the king's hand, Lord Stark. You'll do as I command, or I'll find me a hand who will.
In that same council scene, fearing a Targaryen Dothraki invasion, Robert orders the assassination of a pregnant Daenerys and her unborn child. Ned refuses the order and resigns as hand over it. So be brutally honest about the architecture of that scene. The sharpest political mind Robert ever shows, and the single most dishonourable order he ever gives, happen in the same room, minutes apart. That's not an accident of writing. That is Robert. The insight and the cruelty are the same man. Any version of this story that hands you only the wise king or only the child killer is lying to you. and notice the bitter symmetry. He wants Daenerys dead for being Rhaegar's blood, still avenging a crime that, unknown to him, never happened. Revelation 3. The realm remembers his end as the fitting death of a fool. Fat, drunk Robert, too slow to dodge a boar. The joke writes its own punchline. Except the joke is the cover story, and it's a cover story his killer chose on purpose. On the hunt, Robert's squire Lancel keeps refilling him with wine. Cersei arranged it. She instructed Lancel to serve the king far more than he could handle, then let his own recklessness do the rest. Robert, drunk past reason, orders everyone to stand back so he can take the boar himself. It gores him.
Robert, we were hunting a boar.
So read the scene again with that in hand. This isn't a warrior undone by his appetites. This is a targeted killing that used his appetites as the murder weapon. Cersei didn't need a knife. She knew her husband's weakness so precisely she could kill him with his favourite vintage and let the entire realm blame the man himself. And here's where Revelation 1 turns lethal. Robert had spent years telling everyone he was a bad king. So when his own queen had him killed, the cover wrote itself. Of course, the reckless old boozer got himself gored on a hunt. Who'd look twice? The one thing he never hid, that he named his own flaws out loud, is exactly what made his murder invisible. His self-knowledge became his killer's alibi. But watch what the dying man actually does, because this is the entire case for the defence delivered in 90 seconds. He jokes first, of course he does. King Robert Baratheon, murdered by a pig.
My fault. Too much wine. Missed my thrust. I hereby command Eddard of House Stark, titles, to serve as Lord Regent and Protector of the Realm upon my death.
He dictates a will naming Ned Protector of the Realm and names the root failure of his whole reign.
You were right. Varys Littlefinger, my brother, worthless. No one to tell me no but you. Only you.
Then he reverses his cruelest order. Let her live, stop it if it's not too late. And tells Ned, you'll rule now. You'll hate it worse than I did. But you'll do it well. Look at everyone else in that court. Cersei schemes. Littlefinger lies for sport. Varys plays every side. Pycelle sells his loyalty by the cup. And in the middle of all of it is the one man openly admitting he's bad at the job and judging himself harder than any enemy ever bothered to. In his own words, he draws the line between a good man and a good ruler and puts himself on the wrong side of it, on purpose. That clarity is the rarest thing in that entire court, and it's also exactly what made him so easy to move, so easy to manage, so easy to kill. A man who has already convicted himself doesn't fight for himself. The self-knowledge everyone should have respected is the same self-knowledge that left him defenceless. So this is the tragedy in full. He was murdered using the very flaws he was the only one in that court willing to say out loud. And he met that murder naming his own failure and undoing his worst act, with a clarity nobody around him could match. That is not the death of an oblivious fool. It's the death of the one man in King's Landing who never lied about who he was. And if you think the show already took this as far as it goes, the books go further, much further. This is page only, and it's the darkest beat in his whole arc. In the novels, as Robert lies dying, he says the gods are punishing him for the order he gave to have Daenerys killed, a girl across the sea. He calls himself a wretched king. He says he was as bad as Aerys, the mad king he overthrew. Let that land. The rebel's final act of clarity is to convict himself of being the very thing his entire rebellion was fought to destroy. Robert Baratheon, sitting as judge over his own reign, passing a guilty sentence with his last breath, and the charge is that he became the monster he killed a king to stop. The show gives you a gruffer, simpler death. The books give you a self-verdict. And that's the difference between a stupid man and this one. A stupid man dies confused. Robert died understanding exactly what he'd wasted and exactly what he'd become. That's so much worse. And so much more human. Pull back to the widest frame, and there's one pillar we haven't touched, and you feel it on the show even though it's never said out loud. Think about the world the series opens in. It's calm, kids training in courtyards, lords feasting. The biggest problem at Winterfell, a royal visit, That peace is the baseline the whole show gets to violate, and Robert is the man who held it in place. Aside from his own rebellion, he fought exactly one war as king, the Greyjoy Rebellion, crushed in under a year. After that, no major war across 7 kingdoms that had spent centuries at each other's throats. The moment he dies, the realm shatters into the War of the 5 Kings. And here's the cruel irony. The yin and yang of the whole reign. That peace is his greatest achievement, and his greatest failure at once. The same stability that kept the realm from burning is exactly what let the rot spread underneath it. Take the one crime the meme is most certain about. When Ned becomes Hand, he finds the crown 6 million gold dragons in debt. But who caused it is one of the most disputed points in the fandom. Many argue Robert had no wars or projects big enough to burn through the old reserves, and point instead at Littlefinger, the master of coin we watch, cook the books all series. So even he drank the treasury dry turns out to be an open question. The debt is real. The sole blame is a fan assumption the story never confirms, which is the whole point of this section. Misunderstood cuts both ways. He was more capable than the caricature allows, and more culpable than the broken romantic defence wants to admit. Both at the same time. Why the strongest man in the realm gave up, pull all of it together, and one question is left. Why does a man this capable, this clear-eyed, let himself rot on the throne he bled for? His own words answer it. Winning the throne was when he felt most alive. Sitting it was when he felt most dead. He tells Ned, flat out, that he'd rather Ned run the kingdom while he drinks, and whores his way to an early grave. That's not a man who doesn't understand his job. That's a man who understands it perfectly, and has decided he cannot make himself do it. Because go back to Revelation 1. The thing he actually wanted died at the Trident, and the war he won to get her back turned on something that was never true. He didn't lose the throne. He won it, and found out too late it was never the prize he was fighting for. So everything after, the wine, the feasts, the delegating, isn't laziness. It's a warrior, built for one purpose, forced to rust in a role he never wanted, grieving a woman who chose someone else, for a crime that was never committed. The strongest man in the realm gave up because the story he was living was hollow at the centre, and some part of him could feel it, even if he never knew why. In the books, his last act is to judge himself guilty of becoming the mad king he overthrew. Not an oblivious fool, the only honest man in King's Landing, killed for it, and never once told the truth about the thing that broke him. So what does Robert's story actually leave us with? A cautionary tale about a warrior with no war left to fight. A reminder that the person everyone agrees to laugh at might be the one seeing most clearly, or just the cruelty of a man mourning something that never happened and dying before anyone told him the truth. For me, it's all three. But here's what sticks. We spent a whole show laughing at the caricature on the throne, the punchline, the warning label on a wine bottle, and the whole time he was grieving a wound that was never real, reading the collapse nobody else saw, and getting quietly murdered for weaknesses he was brave enough to admit. We were the ones who misread him, not the other way around. Tell me in the comments, a capable king undone by a grief that was built on nothing, or a man who threw away everything he understood? I read everyone. And if you want the rest of Westeros put on trial like this, subscribe.